and so much around this topic, both within and outside of the localization industry, has been steeped in hyperbole over the last 15 months or so, that I more and more find it crucial to take a step back to ground our discussion a bit. And today we're going to be thinking about what the true impact and the potential of AI really is in our field. To get a true sense, I thought it would be a good idea to first revisit a fundamental question. How good are we really at predicting the future? What's interesting about that question is just a couple of weeks ago, on Friday, February 2nd, we let a rodent predict the future. You know how this works here in the States, right? Every year for the last 138 years, since 1886, this guy has been predicting the future. If he sees a shadow, 6 more weeks of winter, and if he doesn't see a shadow, we're going to have an early spring. So from 1886 until now, he has seen a shadow 105 times, believe it or not, and he's only not seen a shadow 20 times. And the rest, we don't really have a historical record of. According to the Storm Facts Almanac, Punxsutawney Phil, that's the name of this rodent, has been accurate only 39% of the time. So what happens when I guess that's what happens when you let a rat predict the future. But what's our track record as humans? Turns out we have some historical references for that as well. And here's a little clip that I wanted to share with you that I dug up from 1966 to illustrate.
What looks at first to be just a maze of computer characteristics is really a system of very simple graphs which project what's going to happen to the planet over the next 150 years if we don't do something drastic to stop it. But have a look at this curve here. This is called the Z curve, and it represents pollution. Now, predictably enough, as the population increases up to 1980, pollution increases. There's more rubbish. But from 1980 to the year 2020, pollution really takes off. This is assuming, of course, that we don't do anything about it. So the year 2020, the condition of the planet starts to become highly critical. And if we don't do anything about it, this is what's going to happen. The quality of life is going to go right back to practically zero. Pollution is going to become so serious, right out here, that it will start to kill people. So the population will diminish. Right back here, less than it was in the year 1900. And at this stage, around about the year 2040, 2050, civilized life as we know it on this planet will cease to exist.
All right, so here's what stood out watching this old clip from 1966 to me. Apparently, there was plenty of hyperbole in the 60s already, and computer models were predicting the future. And we had a growing rubbish problem, but in the end, I can tell you that in 2023, we're still not at the population levels of where we were in what they predicted in this video. Although we're still struggling to find proper ecological balance, our quality of life has not gone quite back to practically zero, and I'm happy to report that our population has not yet diminished to 1900 levels. When it comes to the future, it's easy to get carried away by panic, especially when there's a lot of change in the forecast. Maybe it's time to come back down to earth a bit around AI as well. I'm not going to try to predict how long it will take for humans to start living on Mars, or when we will go extinct as localizers because of the advent of AI. However, this morning, I'm looking to focus on all the great things artificial intelligence is bringing, and also we'll try to weigh some of the challenges that are still ahead a bit better. Foremost change inevitably also means opportunity, and that's precisely where I would love to direct our focus first this morning: the AI-driven opportunities in the localization industry.
What looks at first to be just a
We already did that. So why am I bullish on the opportunities AI brings to the localization industry? Well, for starters, have you also noticed that many of the time and budget constraints in localization from yesteryear are disappearing because of our improved capabilities with AI? Maybe the time is right to borrow a leaf from the software realm, where product-led growth, PLG, has been the secret sauce behind the success of countless apps in recent memory. As the world gets smaller, isn't it time for some localization-led growth? In today's global market, a stellar product isn't enough. The real magic happens when that product speaks the language of its users, dances the rhythms of their cultures, and fits snugly into the mosaic of their daily lives. Thanks to AI, we're better equipped than ever to weave localization into the fabric of product development, transforming it from a finishing touch to a cornerstone of strategy. Gone are the days when localization was the last checkbox on a long list of development tasks. Now, with AI's speedy assistance, localization is not just a step in the process, it's part of the product's DNA. So product managers going forward, I challenge you to imagine localization not as a postscript, but as a guiding principle from the get-go. The future of product development is one where localization experts sit at the table from day one, infusing products with global sensibilities and ensuring they're born ready to travel the world. Our industry's deep dive into cultural nuances, linguistic subtleties, and market dynamics makes us indispensable. We're not just part of the process. We're helping steer the ship, ensuring products are globally minded from their inception. This shift could revolutionize how products are received worldwide and make the whole localization dance more graceful, and AI is handing us the playbook. Let's make localization-led growth the new growth hack, shall we? Is the era of guesswork finally over? Data-driven localization is the linchpin of effective global expansion today. It equips businesses with the insights needed to make informed, impactful decisions, ensuring that their localization efforts are not just wide-reaching, but deeply resonant. Data analytics have taken center stage everywhere, transforming how businesses approach global expansion. With the help of AI going forward, it will all be about leveraging concrete data to craft localization strategies that hit the mark. Deep dives into customer preferences, behavioral patterns, and market trends through data analytics offer a goldmine of insights, enabling businesses to tailor their efforts precisely to what different audiences need and want. Metrics such as user engagement, conversion rates, and customer feedback are the compass guiding these strategies. They shed light on the effectiveness of localized content and highlight areas needed for cultural tweaks. For example, a spike in engagement in one region might celebrate the success of a localization initiative, while dwindling conversion rates elsewhere could flag a need for adjustment. This continuous feedback loop allows businesses to fine-tune their approach ensuring not just reach, but meaningful engagement with their target audiences. Efficiency is another hallmark of data-driven localization, I believe. Armed with insights, businesses can pinpoint markets ripe for growth, directing their efforts and resources to where they'll make the most impact. This strategic allocation prevents wastage and paves the way for focused growth. Additionally, predictive analytics offer a glimpse into the future trends, giving businesses a head start in adapting their localization strategies for what's coming next. As we delve deeper beyond localization-led growth and aim further at marrying language services with global business strategies, we naturally arrive at LangOps. Think of LangOps as the DevOps of the language world, blending content creation with strategic deployment to put global communication front and center. In an era where customers crave personalization, AI is stepping up, allowing businesses to converse in real time across languages. It's not just about meeting expectations, it's about exceeding them, offering personalized interaction at the speed of thought. AI tools are now our new superpowers, enabling instant translation, understanding sentiments across languages, and connecting with global markets in ways we only dreamed of just a short time ago. The great Jochen Hummel, founder of Trados, recently noted, since its introduction 30 years ago, the fundamental design of translation memory has remained unchanged. Segment-based TMs are incapable of retaining context, and traditionally translations have been stored uniquely for data compression due to hardware limitations at the time. However, even though these hardware restrictions have become obsolete, TMs have not significantly advanced. The limitations of segmentation is something I have elaborated on with Intento's Konstantin Zavenkov when he was my guest on a recent LOC discussion as well. And I believe it's high time we moved on to content recycling, something Jochen calls a vital element of the language factory. This approach would involve using a content repository to manage bilingual XLIF files and generate advanced indexes. This enables the reuse of translated content with context awareness and flexibility beyond the segment length. A sophisticated AI recycling algorithm leverages metadata and domain-specific taxonomies to identify the most fitting translation. What truly sets this approach apart is the unique linguistic value offered by a multilingual content repository over traditional translation memories. Acting as a key resource for LangOps strategy, a content repository supplies high-quality essential for textual AI projects, thereby allowing businesses to innovate and improve their linguistic models. Through the lens of AI, LangOps is creating a whole new playing field. Language service providers are evolving and taking roles that once belonged to global content giants. This shift isn't just about expanding services, it's a call to action for LSPs to invest in new skills, technologies, and leadership. It's an exciting time as we push the boundaries of what's possible in global communication. Let's talk for a minute about the tools that are on the scene right now. Have you also noticed a shift towards integrated automated systems? This change is fueled by the content and the advent of connectors, those nifty pre-coded API hooks that bridge different software applications, allowing for seamless data exchange and automated actions. While this connector revolution is not entirely new, AI is definitely accelerating the trend, and it is set to further transform the language and localization landscape. integrating language services directly into the bloodstream of business processes. We are living science fiction with self-healing engineering tools and microservices hooked up directly to language activities. And AI is also becoming the first democratized technology. All of a sudden, it just takes imagination to invent complex solutions without any coding experience. Recently, Custom MT's Konstantin Dranch challenged me to make a custom GPT that could perform linguistic QA on my French translation. And within minutes, I was able to prompt my way through that task. I actually made a little video clip that I wanted to share with you of it.
I started by asking GPT to prompt for me that would enable me to design a custom GPT that could perform an automated linguistic QA on machine translations from English into French. I then went to the new custom GPT area in the paid version of OpenAI's portal and fed that prompt into the instructions of custom GPT, which I named very originally Stefan's French MT value. Next, I grabbed a short LinkedIn post I wrote about the Beyond panel yesterday and machine translation. I then fed both the English source and French machine translation into Stefan's French MT evaluator, and it promptly returned a full QA report as I instructed it. It not only ranked the quality, but also analyzed the errors on accuracy, local convention, fluency errors, style, terminology errors, do not translate errors, and formality. The whole exercise maybe took 20 minutes.
Pretty amazing stuff. Gone are the days of language services operating in isolation. Now they're an integral part of the business ecosystem, enhancing operational efficiency and ensuring consistency across all functions. Let's talk about MVLS for a second. It's actually an idea that I was informed about by my good friend Ďidzis Graus of Native Localization, who introduced me to this concept of minimal viable language solutions, or MVLS for short. Inspired by the lead startup concept of minimum viable product, it brings a similar less is more philosophy to tackling language barriers during the initial phase of going global. At its core, the MVP model is about hitting the market with a product that has just the essentials to please early users. MVLS mirrors this by focusing on the bare minimum language solutions needed to enter new markets successfully. This isn't about rolling out the red carpets of full-scale localization or offering a wide array of language services right off the bat. Instead, it's about zeroing in on the critical languages and content pieces that promise the most bang for your buck. This lean approach lets businesses dip their toes into new markets with minimal outlay, all the while collecting precious data on customer needs and language preferences. Minimal viable language solutions offer a smart, budget-friendly strategy for breaking into international markets. By concentrating on the essentials for initial market penetration, MVLS enables businesses to use their resources wisely, adapt swiftly, and establish a solid groundwork for broader localization initiatives as they expand their global footprint. The preservation of languages that are going extinct and the promotion of lesser spoken languages has long been a noble goal in the language industry. And I believe AI gives us an opportunity to be part of that. The journey of AI encounters a significant hurdle when it comes to these lesser spoken languages because of data scarcity for training the AI models. Major languages bask in the abundance of data, but lesser spoken counterparts often stand in the shadow and lack fuel for effective AI learning. The synergy between LSPs and tech giants could play a pivotal role in this transformation. LSPs, with their deep linguistic knowledge and cultural insights, are in a great position to join forces with tech companies armed with cutting-edge AI technologies and infrastructural prowess. This alliance could be tackling the data scarcity problem head-on, innovating with synthetic data creation, tapping into community-driven translations, and deploying AI models tailored to thrive on leaner data sets. A collaboration not just solving technical problems, but crafting a gateway for lesser spoken languages to flourish on the global stage, ensuring equitable access to technology and information for all communities. AI's potential to unlock new markets through language inclusivity is staggering. By dismantling linguistic barriers, AI is not merely facilitating economic expansion, it's nurturing cultural exchange and fostering a deep, more meaningful global dialogue. In this way, AI-powered language solutions are not just tools, they're bridges connecting disparate communities, enabling them to share their voices and enriching the global tapestry with their unique cultural threads. While I don't believe the AI genie is going back into the bottle anytime soon, there remains, of course, plenty of ethical issues to resolve around AI, and the large language model train might still derail at some point. There's plenty of challenges ahead. One of the key questions is who owns the content created by AI? As was illustrated by a recent New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI and Microsoft. This legal battle brought to the forefront critical questions regarding copyright law when it became clear OpenAI had not only been using New York Times articles to train its large language models, but was also weighing that content more heavily to give it additional importance in the training of its models. Consequently, the New York Times claimed that many of the answers ChatGPT was coming up with were directly pulled from its proprietary article content. The potential impact of this kind of lawsuit on AI and localization practices, I believe, is significant. It might lead to stricter regulations and guidelines around the use of AI content for sure. So let's conclude. Embracing the reality in the AI-driven future. As we conclude our journey through the dynamic landscape of AI and localization, let's reflect a moment on what we've uncovered. We've seen the evolution from product-led growth to localization-led growth, the rise of LangOps and the agility of minimal viable language solutions. AI-generated translations have unveiled a remarkable yet dual-edged nature. AI's speed and ability to process vast content volumes stand unmatched, but it often stumbles over subtleties of culture, context, and idioms, areas where the human touch excels. This dichotomy emphasizes the need for a balanced integration of AI within the localization workflow. I believe there can be a remarkable synergy between AI and human expertise. These developments paint a picture of an industry that is not only adapting to change, but is at the forefront of a technological innovation. Many struggles remain. The localization industry can play an important role in making sure AI is developed not just for the most spoken languages in the world. We will also have to figure out who owns the data and the created content. The future, as history has often shown us, tends to unfold in ways that surpass our expectations. While it's true that we cannot predict the future with absolute certainty, we can be optimistic, I believe, about the prospects it holds. The advancements in AI and localization we are witnessing today are just the beginning. They open up a realm of possibilities where communication barriers are further diminished and cultural exchanges are enriched. The future promises a more connected world where language differences are no longer obstacles, but bridges to deeper understanding and cooperation. Our journey forward calls for both adaptation and innovation. It invites us to stay open to new possibilities, to learn from the unfolding narrative of technology and human ingenuity. As leaders, innovators, and thinkers in this field, our role is to navigate these changes wisely, ethically, and with an eye towards the vast potential they hold. We are not just participants in this evolution, we are architects shaping the future of how the world communicates and connects. In closing, I urge each one of us to embrace AI as a powerful ally in the field of localization. Let's harness its capabilities responsibly and imaginatively, always remembering that our ultimate goal is to build a world where every voice is heard and understood. The future is not just something happening to us, it's something we create. And together we have the power to make it remarkable. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is really interesting. And well, we're going to have a few minutes now if you want to do Q&A, if you have any questions for Stefan specifically. This is the right time to do it. So feel free, open your mic. We won't bite.
We have some very esteemed guests that are going to join us in a panel as well. We have Bruno Herrmann and Julio Leal and Sung Cho. And we prepared a whole list of topics to discuss with them as well. So you tell me, Jorgelina, whether you would like to fire off a question, whether you would like me to fire off a question right away, or
that'd
whether
be
you have a
great.
question.
Let's
a question.
do it.
All right, let's delve right in. Are our guys there? We is Sung, Bruno, and Julio around? Are you gonna put them in the center, Jorgelina?
We're here.
Ah, cool. Nice to see you this morning. My first question actually was for Sung, and it was about that localization-led growth concept that I took a little bit of a chance on, to be honest, because it's not something that's in the current literature. So, Sung, since you work for Amazon and you're probably best positioned to answer about the reality of that concept, do you think the concept of LLG has the potential of redefining the metrics of success for global product expansion, and how? Or am I just crazy bringing up the idea?
Thanks for the question, Stefan. Excuse me, when I saw the question, it was actually kind of a little amusing for me, because that you find it as actually kind of redefining or sort of a new concept. But I've been in the industry for the last 30 years. And then to me, this kind of like localization-led or product-led is sort of like paradoxical discussion. It's not exactly like, one or the other. You have to go together on that, because that traditionally localization entity was actually sort of given as actually more like cost center rather than the revenue center. These are the entities that actually spend the money rather than actually kind of generate the revenue. So every single time when we actually kind of try to justify that our existence, we need to kind of redefine us as actually kind of revenue generator center. And then even within last probably 20, 30 years, that every single entity said actually what we do, localization-led the growth is actually revenue generation rather than actually spending the money on that. Another things that you need to keep in mind is that this is actually all depend on the, let's say, organization maturity or the product maturity. So just to be specific, giving an example that when I was working on, let's say, that one of the internet startup, these are actually that internet startup that will actually mainly focus on their domestic market. So they do not really think about localization or globalization at the beginning. However, at the same time, you need to make sure that actually the localization or internationalization expert has to be part of the product group to lay the right foundation. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that by the time you get to be ready for the secondary or tertiary, I mean, the third tier market, you need to almost like rewrite the entire source code base to get it going into the next level. I'll give you actually exactly that sort of like a specific example. My first project on the internationalization was at Symantec. So I was actually a localization engineer, actually not a localization engineer at the time. I was actually just a software developer. And, my manager came in and said, you know what, I have a good news and bad news. And typically that good news, bad news is really bad news. But he said, well, you know that actually that the sales guy we just hired in Japan, he actually sold our product in Japan market. The bad news, our product doesn't work in Japan. So he actually asked me to, localize. So it was actually nothing to do with Japanese linguistics side. It's more like making that product work in Japan. And I had to rewrite almost like about 30% of source space just to make it work. So it's actually, you could go into that much, the sort of like the rewrite on that. So the point I'm making is that depending on that actually that let's say organization and product maturity, you need to set the right foundation. And then once you're ready for that, then everything sort of follow from there. Internationalization, regionalization, localization, and then even next level into the personalization. So absolutely, what you're saying, Stefan, is not really dream. It is actually happening for right mature organization right now behind the scene. It's just that actually sometimes you feel like that is actually over the board, then to the sort of like from product to the localization. But for the team, let's say the organization are mature enough and then stable, they are already built into this kind of system in there.
Awesome. I believe that Charles has a question for all of us. If you can let him on, Jorgelina, I will be happy to let him ask his question. And otherwise, we'll move on with my second question. You tell me.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
There you are.
Very good. Well, my question isn't actually related to what Sang-Xiao just said. It was actually what you were talking about, Stefan, and it was very conceptual. But don't worry. It's just, I hear so many people using AI to write their emails and to do their calculations. And aren't we all just going to get really lazy? I mean, I feel that I'm creative enough to write my own emails. And, I didn't get an A+ in math in school, but I don't need AI to do my calculations either. I'm just wondering, is this a use it or lose it? So we don't use our brains and we let AI do so much more and we just become like Teletubbies?
I would challenge that notion and tell you that the way we're using AI is it's changing the way we operate, and we're saving time in certain stages. I'll give you an example. The other day I had to write a really delicate email. I can craft that email with my eyes closed. It probably take me 15 minutes though to come up with it. Just by putting the main points in bullet point format, I could just feed it into the large language model and tell it to write me a very polite email, which it promptly did. And then I put the final touches on it. So in the end, I think the end result is as good, if not better. And it probably saved me 10, 15 minutes of production time. I think that's really what's changing. It's not that we can't do it by ourselves. It's just like doing math with a calculator. you know, you can do the square root of something manually, but if you have a calculator right there, it's just going to go that much faster. You're shortcutting the process. Anybody else have an opinion about that that doesn't align?
No, I mean, I think that actually I align what you say. Just to kind of complement, it's not a matter of one or the other. It's just a matter of you know, your choice. Like I always kind of give an example of navigation. Like these days that we don't really think about the navigation, but the time that actually when we didn't have a navigation, we put that actually all those kind of map into our brain and then try to actually map our actually the direction into the destination, and our brain was actually sort of, you know, trained that way. Nowadays, it's like if I actually been to that location twice or three times, now I shouldn't really need a navigation. But now our brain is structured so that we are dependent on navigation, because not only that actually provide that actually the spatial location, but also traffic information and other information as well. Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Does it actually make that our brain dumber that way? I think that it's actually, you need to sort of, you know, take it into the consideration of the multi-factor. It's not really just one-dimensional question.
Charles, your rebuttal?
I think
Maybe
it's a
not.
great answer. And I think it's a great answer. And I was just playing the devil's advocate, you know, the whole, you know, I do wonder, you know, if people, you know, I'm just saying, you know, people who use Grammarly every time they write an email, these people probably will actually go in the opposite direction of learning to spell better and write better on their own and become lazy. But,
See,
you know,
this
that's
is
just
a
my approach because I'm 48, but I'm sure 18-year-olds don't see it the same way.
so you know, it's very interesting because I have an 18-year-old at home, and one of the things that happened in the United States is that they stopped teaching spelling, and so I am horrified at the spelling skills he has currently. But I would venture out to say that through the use of Grammarly, he actually is becoming better at spelling and at writing, because it's correcting him while he's in the process of doing the writing. So it's as if you have a teacher right there correcting you constantly and telling you that's with two N's or whatever the correction might be. So in that sense, I think the AI helps educate my son in a way that the teachers have stopped doing here in the United States. Maybe we should move to the next topic. What do you think?
Stefan, I have a question. Sorry,
Yes.
I have a comment. Just to circle back on what Charles just said, you know, using Grammarly, can this make you less creative or less, I would say, you know, can it make your brain less dynamic? I think that I tend to make the difference now, the discrimination between content generation and content creation. I think we are talking about generative AI. We're not talking so much about creative AI. And I think generative AI is giving you the sort of raw material that will help you be more creative. That's what I see in some of my projects, because people use AI now to generate content and they refine it, they enrich. I like the word enrich the content with their style. So you can actually use, you know, you can use any AI tool right now. Even the best ones will generate some content that is probably correct, sometimes even trustworthy, but you still can add your creative layer by, you know, using different styles, using, you know, using puns, for instance, or things like that. So I think I make the discrimination now in my projects between content generation and content creation. Generation is definitely on the AI side, and creation is, for me, still at least more on the human side.
Yeah, I really like that, Bruno. I think that's very well put. While we're having you talk, I have a question for you actually, because I know you're a big proponent of LangOps, just like me. You're one of the pioneers, and I wanted to ask you, how do you think LangOps will transform the traditional business communication for global engagement?
Well, I think for me, the LangOps framework, and again, LangOps is not a technology, it's the strategic approach. So people believe sometimes that LangOps is some sort of new solution on the marketplace, but it's definitely more a strategic approach to indeed manage localized content in a different way. The reason why I like the LangOps framework, and the reason why you and I were pioneers, I believe, is because, well, first of all, it's a great framework in many ways, but personally, the way I like it is because it works very well to frame AI deployment. So when I mean deployment, I mean, readiness, readiness, implementation, and adoption. These are the words I wanted to use. And actually, for me, the LangOps framework brings together the three major components of successful AI and value-driven AI use, which is the people, making sure that humans are definitely part of the picture, and LangOps is insisting on that. The second component of successful AI is processes, making sure that the processes are adapted to manage to manage the content supply chain in a way that AI is going to be ready for. So no more files, more language data. So less files, more data. So data-driven is very important in the LangOps framework. And the last component, and the last reason why I like LangOps is because it prepares you, it makes you ready if you are in an organization having a lot of content to manage that content in what I would call the post-TMS area, which is when actually, content will be, as I said, will be more data than files. And this data will be used to recycle content more than to reuse content. And I think if you bring together people, processes, and technology together, when you say that you are going to use that in your strategy, I think the LangOps framework is helping you to make sure that you don't lose track of any of these components, and that you say, yes, upskilling my teams is important because they need to be able to use AI properly and effectively. Then you need to adapt your workflows, no more transaction of files or less transaction of files and more flows of data, and that your ecosystem is unified and centralized to be able to cover the supply chain from creation to delivery in a much better way. So LangOps is not just an operational model, although it's very operational. I think it also makes sure that there is really a cross collaboration and in full integration of people and ecosystems. And I've got some concrete examples of why it works because I used it myself in my previous job. So it's really something that I believe in, not just for one reason, but for multiple reasons, if that makes sense.
All right, that's great. We haven't heard from one person in the panel yet. Julio, I would like to ask you the next question, and like to switch to the idea of minimal viable language solutions. How do you feel the concept of MVLS aligns with the agile methodology in software development? I assume, I hope rightfully so, that you're involved with that particular aspect of things, and you have lots to say about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Stefan, for the question and for the keynote. Good to know that we are not close to extinction. So that's good to know. So yeah, as you will said, the MVLS goes, hand in hand with, with agile methodology. And this is very important in digital products and especially in the startup environment. We all know that agile is, all about iterative development, flexibility, rapid deployment. So MVLS advocates for basically the same concepts. We just want to launch the product with just enough features to satisfy those early customers in those markets that we want to step in. And at the same time, we want to minimize the cost and the time to market for those new language. So basically adopting this MVLS approach allows the teams to focus on core functionalities and essential language assets that are basically the necessary core for these new markets. This basically means translating the most critical content of your product, ensuring legal and cultural compliance, and then basically just iterating based on your user feedback. And basically this strategy aligns perfectly with the Agile's principle of repetitive improvement and responding to change, to user feedback, making sure that you are always on top of your user demands. So obviously, this approach has a lot of benefits because you are always to respond to the user demands and user feedback very fast. At the same time, you are always able to enter new markets rapidly, giving you a market share, which might be very critical for new products and new companies entering new markets to avoid the competition to gain market share. But obviously, this approach comes along with some risks. And obviously, some of the most important risks come with the idea of underestimating the importance of fully localizing your product, meaning that, hey, if we are able to go ahead and translate the product using the minimal localization effort and things are going the right way, why should we go for the full localized product? So obviously, that one might be one risk of doing this MVLS approach.
If I can jump in just for a second here, I would be very interested in knowing, is this something that you are employing right now at Spendesk? Is this kind of the model that you have, or how do you operate? How does it work in real life?
Yes and no. Because our product right now is different on desktop and on mobile. So we may have two different approaches, and we are not targeting the same users for each of the products. Let's say that the mobile product is a very limited product of what we offer on our desktop version. So for that specific product, we do, because it's very limited. We just do minimal localization, making sure that the basics are covered. For the desktop version of our product, we follow a different approach. We might be targeted on the maturity of the audience that we have on those market, the target audience of our product. We have quite a few product teams within Spendesk, each of them working on different customer personas. The customer personas that we have in one market might not be the same in other markets. So the functionalities on which we focus localization for these personas may differ from market to market. So it would be a hybrid approach what we have right now on Spendesk.
Very, very interesting. We had an audience question from Mariana that kind of I want to throw on the table for anybody in the panel who wants to have something to say about it. And she is asking whether or what do you believe the relationship will be between AI and the demands and expectations it will lead us to have, not only in the professional aspect of our lives, but personally as well in our routines and habits. Because with AI, sky is the limit, she says. Is it correct to suspect AI will lead us to be less creative or less productive, but more demanding of creativity and production? Do you think that our clients are going to become more demanding as far as language is concerned? Anybody?
I can tell what I'm seeing in my experience right now. AI is definitely becoming an enhancer of productivity. Back in the old days, we would say that, hey, as a translator, I can do, I don't know, 2,000, 2,500 words per day. That's my productivity rate for normal content. Now that's not applicable anymore. The way that we have scaled our production, the way that we can translate more with the same resources is incredible. So even content that in the past we did not consider translating just because we could not afford the cost, now we are doing it. As Bruno said earlier, AI is there as an helper, an enabler, but at the same time, we still need that human layer, as he put it, to make sure that there is a human touch to all the content you create. We were discussing the minimal language product. Yeah, that's something that you can use this approach on, but there are certainly other things in which still human touch is irreplaceable. That's what I've been seeing so far, but maybe other panelists have a different experience.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to what the Julio said, absolutely. I mean, he touched base on the productivity side, but even just for creative side, to me, localization, whether it was actually past through the TM, MT, now with AI, we need to add a value. So we need to add a value on top of what that automation brings. That means that if AI can bring a creativity, we need to be adding additional creativity on top of that to make sure we add a value to that. So absolutely, AI means that we need to probably multiply by 10 times of our creativity. So there is going to be probably much more demand on the creativity side moving forward.
Very interesting. All right, let's circle back to one of the topics that I spoke about in the presentation as well. AI's role in supporting lesser spoken languages. This question's for Bruno. What innovative approaches are AI and tech companies taking to overcome the data scarcity and training models for lesser spoken languages?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great topic too, because I think it's, as you said during your keynote, Stefan, I think when we talk about the value of AI, of course, we can talk about the value for the business, for customers, but also for society. I think it's very important to make sure that AI can contribute to, sort of making our world a bit better. I think that I would use the case of Indian languages, because that's a very interesting case. When you talk about low resource languages or less spoken languages, I think India is once again, I would say, is showing the way of how to deal with that, or how to deal with that challenge. And I would say that you talk about innovative ways. I think it's I would use pragmatic ways to do it. When you say to people that AI will be performing better in some languages if those AI engines, if the language models are better as well, or have more content, you just realize that people not always understand that to close some gaps for these lesser spoken languages, you need more data. So it's not very innovative to say that you need more data, but it's innovative in a way for some organizations or some countries, because they have plenty of assets of content, which might be text, which might be video, which might be audio. But as such, as files, these assets are not usable for AI. So you have to go through a conversion and I would say, through a data management approach to make sure that when you convert these assets of content into data, that will help make language models and make AI engines better in some lesser spoken languages, that you are incorporating, that you are managing these processes properly. So I would say the innovative ways here are, I would speak more about changing ways of dealing with content, and not always believe that AI is going to work with files. It doesn't. It works with data. And there is a big difference between managing content with files or with data. So if you want to really close gaps in a number of languages, you sometimes have untapped assets of content that you need to convert into data, so that AI finally gets better at some lesser spoken languages. that is what I'm seeing. And India is a great example. I encourage people to search on LinkedIn about what the Indian government, also some Indian companies are doing to cover their 600 languages that are spoken in this 1.8 billion country.
I'd like to broaden the scope a little bit on this question and involve Sung in the follow-up on this, because Amazon is one of these companies that is actively involved in AI and building large language models. Sung, you're in localization at Amazon. Do you think that there could be a collaboration between LSPs and tech companies to pave the way to preserve linguistic diversity in AI?
Absolutely. That's a short answer. Long answer is that I am going to actually refers to my experience and the practical experience in this side is that I cannot name that company, but previous I used to work at the LSP side as well too. And then in the LSP side, what I work was actually with another, like I cannot really name it, another major company to train the MT engine for African languages. So this is really, let's say, less spoken languages. And in order for the machine translation engine to be effective, the minimal level of the segment that you need to, what they call kind of a minimal training volume, is about 250,000 segments. That's a significant amount of data for you to actually kind of train it. So anytime that you try to train any kind of new languages is a very, very, very expensive endeavor. So even the time that when I was actually working on these African languages, within just four languages that I was actually working with that actually this major tech company in the LSP side, it was a significant amount of money as well as actually the engagement. Now with the AI, Stefan, you just kind of mentioned a little bit during your presentation is that not only that actually segment by segment training or the relationship, now you could really have a sort of an inter-segment context within that actually that your own translation, the asset database, so that instead of actually requiring the 250,000 segment as a minimal, you could actually go with the 25,000 and you are able to actually sort of leverage it more effectively. So moving forward, we have actually ability for that that the machine translation engine can be available for that the less spoken language in conjunction with the LSP and the major tech company. So it is a good thing, and I think that actually it is to me is one of my, let's say, the passion area, because I remember that actually about 10 years ago, I was kind of involved in the sort of like side project for sort of like a translating that some of those kind of old texts into that let's say less spoken languages. And when you think about it, any kind of a new, let's say, the language that doesn't really have any kind of, let's say, the letters, the first thing they actually have it is there's actually the UN the document, which is actually the baseline, and then there's actually the Bible. So those two are baseline that you use for any kind of machine translation training, and try to actually kind of leverage that. It is a very difficult thing, but with the AI, with that actually that providing the context, absolutely. I think this is going to be actually the sort of like a new beginning for the next generation of the training for the less spoken languages.
Very, very interesting. Julio, we talked a little bit about tools. I'd like to circle back to that for a second and get your real life experience with connectors and the integration of AI tools. How does the integration of automated workflows redefine productivity within the localization industry and specifically at Spendesk as well?
Sure. So yeah, as you well said, I'm going to give you like a real life sample of my life at Spendesk. So we are using a TMS with AI-enabled translation, which was launched like a year ago. And since then, we have kind of been testing all the different functionalities and options that we can use this technology for. And for us, it has dramatically changed the way we do things for product localizations. because we have been able to use this AI-enabled feature with one of our key integration, which is between our TMS and Figma, which is where basically all designs are created on. So we do no longer wait for developers to give us the strings for translate. We translate directly from Figma. Through this integration, we are able to translate on our TMS based on Figma back to Figma at the same time that we are having development. So one of the key benefits that we've seen is that we are able to translate and localize our product at the same time as development. So there are no delays between the English version and the multilingual versions. And then another benefit is the dramatic reduction of testing, just because by integrating Figma and by having all the localized versions on Figma, we are able to see where are the errors, where are the things that we need to be fixed during development. Things like, hey, text going too long, things not fixing into the UX. These are things that can be done between things going live. And one of the key things that we are doing is using AI-enabled translation. We are able to do a lot of pre-testing AI translation just to see how things look. And that's kind of feedback that we use to provide to developers so they can start doing fixes before before they actually happen. So we anticipate a lot of these testing things that in the past only happen at the very end of the process. Now they are happening actually in the process. So that's been, a dramatic change for us.
It's very interesting. And one of the follow-up questions I have and I'm fascinated by is the change in quality assurance that I've been seeing at so many of your type of companies, so to speak, and maybe you can second that and give us your viewpoint on it. But so often I'm now hearing that language or content that's been translated doesn't even get edited or proofed anymore. It essentially gets put live, and if there's feedback that comes back, then you might go look at it, or if you see engagement going down, you might go look at it. There might be certain triggers in the process, so to speak, but there's a lot less of a need for a complex process of editing and proofing while you're releasing the data. Is that something that you live in your world as well?
Well, yes and no. Again, we try not to push content out there without actually being reviewed by humans. I don't think we are still ready yet, and I think that might be very close to happen, but that also depends on the brand image, what are your internal policies, etc. At least where we are right now, we are not ready to go there yet. One of the things we are implementing in terms of quality, it's AI-generated quality reports. That means that especially for small companies, startups, that's a critical process that you can integrate in your framework when you don't actually have the resources yet. So you can start having a sense of what's the quality provided by the translators, by your language providers, by AI, etc., and estimate if AI is the way forward for your translation, or if you still need to have a hybrid approach and make sure that you have the right decision. So you have a lot of data coming from AI quality reports that can.
You're using my custom GPT at Spendesk.
What's that again?
You're using my custom GPT at Spendesk to run the. It was a joke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I did the experiment with the LQA. It's interesting because I was in a presentation panel with Scott Schwalbach from Amazon over a year ago at LOC, and he was outlining how for his group at Amazon, they were not doing any LQA before releasing the content anymore, and they were just essentially monitoring the metrics, the engagement metrics, and also they had triggers on feedback. There's an easy way for customers to give feedback on the content that he produces. And obviously, if there's an issue, then they might take another look at it. Sung, is that the way it works for you at Amazon as well, or is it different for your group?
No. One thing that actually I want to clarify is that within Amazon, there's probably, I don't know, 40, 45 independent localization entity, and all those kind of different entity has a different approach. I
Yeah.
know Scott's team, because of that actually content specific nature of that team, they have a one approach. But for us, I'm actually part of the what we call the seller support, where that actually we engage in the support seller. And to us, getting those linguistic wrong is not really option. So it's a different approach per different area as well too.
Yeah, yeah. He might actually produce content that is learning content internally for Amazon, so it might be a different audience. Bruno, how do you think data analytics redefine the decision-making process and localization strategies?
Okay, well, I would say that, I think Julio mentioned it already, with AI, we've got more data than ever available. So already now, the number of localization strategies are data-driven. So, based on data from customer experience, based on census data, if you address the total market. But I think one major way to redefine, or at least to improve, localization strategies with the data that will come and that will go to AI is actually to be more focused, if needed, or to be better focused on effectiveness of content. What I mean here is that when you localize content, you might have already a lot of data now from your customers or from your organization, if you do that internally. And of course, you can measure how effective it is, how well it has been received, in other words, in the various languages. And of course, to check if those metrics, if that data is matching also your priority in terms of localization, where, which languages, which markets, etc. But I think now there is another potential opportunity for just to be more granular and be more focused again on how to measure that effectiveness. Because what I noticed, when I was working for suppliers or when I was on the buyer side, is that sometimes you expect people to know what quality. I prefer to use effectiveness, but if you want to use quality, you can. So what quality meant when I was asking them what is quality content for you, they were saying, let me think about it, because they didn't have any KPIs, or they had some very high-level KPIs, or they had KPIs for all their content, and they could not discriminate KPIs according to the type of content. So I think that now with AI, you will be able, or sometimes you can already, do it faster without sort of, scratching your head and say, what should I do? What should I do now to increase the effectiveness of my content? So that is one way to improve the localization strategy based on what I call the content effectiveness or content quality, if you prefer that term. So that's probably my short answer to that question.
All right. Jorgelina, is there anybody in the audience that has a question for us? Because I'm rambling on, and one of the technical difficulties in moderating a panel like this is that there's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm not always the greatest at keeping an eye on what is said in the chat. If there's somebody that has a question that you would like to bring to the forefront, feel free to jump in and help me, Jorgelina, with that. In the meantime, I have a question for Julio about a topic that's near and dear to my heart that I didn't really speak about in the presentation, but I want to ask him the question anyway because I think it's relevant to the conversation. How do you think the rise of content marketing and social media platforms has changed the landscape of localization, Julio? Has he left? I hope not.
Yo, I'm here.
Okay.
I was muted. Can you say the question again, Stefan? Sorry.
So how has the rise of content marketing and social media platforms changed the landscape of localization? That's maybe not directly related to AI, but I'm interested in how content is changing the landscape.
From what I've seen, I've experienced myself, in terms of content marketing, what I've seen is an explosion of content. I think I posted recently something about it on LinkedIn, and it's more related about now marketing teams have the chance to, well, as Bruno said, generate more content, not necessarily create more content, but generate more content. And teams that were reduced and were very limited, and that maybe they were able to just to provide a very limited amount of, blog post or relevant marketing content, now they are able to provide way more content and way more relevant. That's a very good way of attracting organic traffic to your website and to your product. That content doesn't have to be perfect, but as I said, it's a very cheap and natural way of attracting content. And then based on the metrics, you can just realize what content is more relevant, what content is attracting more users. And based on those data, then you can start adding that human layer that we have previously discussed to that content and making even more appealing and more SEO friendly. So from a content marketing perspective, I think that AI has been extremely beneficial in creating more content and, simplifying way better things for the marketing teams. In terms of social media, I don't really have a strong opinion on that, as I'm not really involved in that myself. But maybe some other panelists have a take on that, because personally, I don't have much experience on that here at Spendesk.
Yeah. I was gonna switch it up and talk for a second about the legal implications of the New York Times lawsuit, and maybe ask Sung what he thinks the broader implications are of a lawsuit like that. Certainly at Amazon, you are busy with building large language models, and I assume you are grabbing data wherever you can. Does this have any repercussions, you think, on the way you operate at Amazon?
Before I answer that question, one of the question on that, actually, that the chat
Yes.
window
Oh,
was
Tim
actually
has a
kind of,
question, I think. I'm horrible at getting
no,
people involved that
no,
way.
that's fine.
Hi,
Jorgelina,
Sung.
That's fine, that's Stefan, because I think that this was kind of related to that, actually, the point that I was going to make into that direction. So
okay,
I think that
good.
actually I can answer that question and then go into that answering yours.
Was
So
Tim gonna ask his question, though? I think we were inviting
I
on the.
believe Sung was referring to my question. But yeah,
no, it was actually about Julie about the interpretation, but
oh, the
that's
other
fine,
one.
Tim. No, Tim, go ahead.
Hi, Sung. You can jump on that question first if you want, but I guess my question was, and it's particularly relevant to Amazon. So LLMs like ChatGPT, I know there's a lot of data security issues with using those. How do you think those issues may affect their use in localization, for example, integrating them into cat tools and that sort of thing?
I think that actually that Amazon's approach in the let's say the ownership or security of the data is actually in a way complex, but as well as a simple. Is that actually the ownership is actually on that the owner of the content itself. And when we say owner, anybody who actually used that actually, let's say our AWS service under S3 or that actually any kind of, let's say, cloud, within their own, let's say that actually that the ownership, we actually sort of have a segregation of the data. So we don't really crawl, let's say, internet to try to train any of our AI engine, nor actually try to sort of interact between that actually that different S3 bucket. It's like your data is your data. If you want to train your engine, you use your data. And then if you want to train with someone else's data in the other bucket, you need to get specific authorization from there. So it is a very, very segregated approach on that. So you have to kind of approach that way that we have actually that, any kind of those kind of training will be actually depending on the ownership based on that actually your cloud on that the segregation there. So that's actually kind of an answer for that question. The question that I was actually going to answer is that actually about the interpretation. So the question was, I'm going to read it. Will AI and the era of the simultaneous and consecutive interpretation during interviews and conference and etc.? No, I don't think so. So it's not a question of ability. To me, it's a question of liability. It's almost like that you asked the question of, let's say, difference between the law against the food against the pharmaceutical industry. So for the food, people don't really die. Like, I mean, the cases of actually people dying is really kind of rare, but for pharmaceutical, it is really real issue. So for liability, when you do the translation, regardless of how much you trust it, how much that the AI is actually advanced it's a case of liability. So if someone died because of there's a wrong translation, wrong interpretation, are you going to actually blame the AI engine? No, there has to be something behind that actually has a liability issue. So to me, interpretation, absolutely not. I mean, of course, let's say just a YouTube interview by some social celebrity, yeah, you can use the AI engine. But if there's actually, let's say, political conference or any of the important conference or the other, let's say, the interviews, you have to use actually human being assisted by AI engine. So somebody's going to actually use that actually AI engine as actually assistant, but will be actually sort of providing the human input onto that. So going from there to that actually the question on the New York Times, the question has a, yeah, it will change it because I think that actually that the fundamental the question we have is actually fair use, like up to where, like in which boundary that we were going to define as a fair use against that, let's say that actually this is a plagiarism, because that right now, what the New York Times is essentially saying is that whatever that actually that your the OpenAI or that the Microsoft is creating is plagiarizing whatever that actually the article that we used to have it. Is it? Or is it not? It's difficult question. And then I think that actually this is actually that the something that will be decided in the court. And then once that is actually decided, it's going to be actually sort of like define the playing rule in the AI environment moving forward. So to me, it's kind of similar thing as actually kind of in a publishing industry or that the music industry 50, 100 years ago, is that there are certain rules already established about the plagiarism or the things that actually that you can and you cannot do. For AI part, it's going to be similar kind of thing. The court of law will actually define what is going to be the boundary, and then our industry probably need to actually work within the boundary as well too. Do I have an answer right now? Absolutely not. We don't really know how it's going to play out. But what we need to know is that actually that we need to be aware about the rule changes that actually coming down, and we need to adapt based on that as well too. So it is actually that adaptation, not about right or wrong, I think.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subtopic. I think we could go on about for a very long time. I want to slowly start thinking about wrapping things up a little bit. And one of the last issues I talked about in my presentation was the balance between AI innovation and human expertise. I would love to know from anybody on the panel really in what ways they think we can best leverage AI and use it in the most optimal way without compromising quality and still also optimize the use of translators. Maybe we can do a round of three, and each of you can have a quick word on that particular topic to wrap it up.
I can start.
Who wants to go first?
Okay.
Go ahead,
All
Bruno.
right. Okay. Well, the short answer or the short point would be that the best way to leverage or to actually keep leveraging human expertise to work with AI effectively to do what you just said, not reducing quality, is actually making sure that language expertise remains in the picture. Because in some organizations today, AI content management or even AI translation tends to be more and more in the hands of data scientists. I personally believe, based on my experience in 2 companies, that language experts and data scientists can work together to make the most of AI, not just one or the other, the 2 of them. And the other thing that I would underline here is that, well, when there is when we talk about human expertise, it has to be more than just expertise. I think Sung touched on that. It's also humans are still needed to be owning and to be responsible for the content. I worked in the life science industry, and I liked was the example like Sung mentioned that if something is wrongly translated in a pharmaceutical document, you're not going to be blaming the machine anyway. You need a human being to, and that's applicable to other industries as well. So not just pharmaceuticals. So I think that expertise means also ownership. And I think humans are experts in ownership for the moment. Maybe one day we'll get to the point where we have robots like in the movie with Will Smith, I, Robot, but that's not the point yet.
Julio?
Sure. So 2 final thoughts from my side. One is, well, I understand that there is a lot of concern in the industry about what's going to happen with a lot of the work that used to be done by humans, etc. There seems to be a lot of automation. Everyone doesn't really know when this will end or what are the possibilities. But I guess that we all need to be aware that we are in an exploration phase. We need to know what AI is capable of, and for that we need to be testing different things every day. We are testing how AI is translating, how AI is dubbing, how AI is generating content, etc. And I think it's fair for us to test this, and based on the results, then we need to kind of come up with a new approach on how we do localization, right? And the second thing is something that we have not really touched base today, but I think it's quite important. In some cases, AI will not actually replace anything. It will actually add more content that it would have not been otherwise being translated. And this comes from personal experience, and companies spend a lot of money on, internal e-learning materials like videos, training videos, training materials, etc. In previous companies, subtitling or dubbing all those materials were extremely expensive. So in most cases, they were either just left in English or just with subtitles only. With all these new tools that we have in the market, now we are able to provide fully localized versions for our internal users for training materials. So in those cases, we are actually providing a more localized experience to employees in many corporations that otherwise it would have not happened. So I think in those cases, this is actually extremely beneficial.
Yeah. Some final words.
So since this is actually TBO talent forum, let me comment about from the talent's perspective. As Bruno and then Julio actually said, building the human expertise is not going to change it. I mean, to me, I think it's just going to be developing and then sort of like a building the different expertise. So when we actually sort of, just to give a practical example, when we move from SMT to NMT, so statistical to the neural, the linguist actually has to develop a different, let's say, expertise. So instead of actually kind of looking for statistical pattern, you need to start looking for the machine error in the neural network, and then able to actually correct them effectively. So that's a different expertise that actually talent need to actually develop it as well. In the event of actually AI, the problem with that actually the generative AI is that actually they are really, really good making a plausible, like even better than NMT. However, they have actually this what they call hallucination. I mean, to me, what I usually call is the intent hallucination. So here's a translation, like there's an original intent about the source, and then you will translate into that actually that the whatever that actually that the target format. Unfortunately, AI is really great creating that the hallucination of that intent and then go into the complete wrong direction. So unless you develop the expertise to detect that effectively and cost efficiently, you are not going to be useful in the let's say event of the AI driven industry moving forward. So as a talent within the localized industry, now we need to develop a different expertise. As a PM, we need to actually create that actually the environment to detect more effectively. As a linguist, you need to develop let's say that the expertise to detect easily. As an engineer, you need to be able to actually kind of build that the tools that actually detect that effectively as well too. So we are building that different expertise, and it's just that actually that moving into that area to make sure that actually we drive that productivity moving forward.
Awesome. All right, Jorgelina, I think that puts a nice bow on it. Is there anything else that you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, really. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything and for your knowledge and for sharing this this in this forum. It's been great, and it's actually a topic that we can talk for hours for sure.
We could do another whole episode on this, but thank you so very
Yeah.
much, Bruno, Julio, and Sung for a very spirited and interesting discussion on AI and the future of localization. And yeah, thank you very much. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day, everybody. Don't forget, it is Valentine's Day.
Thank you,
Happy
everyone.
Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, just the two
Hold
of
on.
us.
Hold on one second.